Okay, remember that they are changing my voice. This video is a response to all the conservative propaganda out there, all the conservative discussions you see on the internet, where they argue that their country is being taken over and that they want people to take on their values. So the title of this video is Why the Attack on Multiculturalism is an Obvious Racist Attack on Peoples and Cultures for the Purpose of Behind-the-Scenes Slavery and Coercion. Keep in mind I'm being filmed, I'm not gay, and it's white Jews and LGBT supremacists who are the main conservatives in the conservative elite. Even though a lot of LGBT people, for example, a lot of Jews, a lot of white people define themselves as liberals, the main people in the governing class who are doing this are whites, Jews, and LGBT people. So point number one, the world is one thing naturally, and then mankind carved it into nations, especially after about 500 years ago when those waves of colonialism hit. The waves of colonialism that hit 500 years ago, which eventually led to the formation of the United States of America, for example. So people keep forgetting that when we're talking about morality and what is fair and just and right, you have to consider that the world is one thing naturally, and people made countries in a way that's arbitrary. Now, that's not everything in regards to the topic. That's not all there is to it, but that is significant nonetheless. Point number two, the West set up proxy governments and exerts corporate control, as does China, Russia, what have you, to some degree. As a result of their so-called foreign interest agenda, lots of horrible things happen. They have turned many countries into countries with bad economies and turbulent situations. So if you have proxy governments all over the world, and you're part of an alliance, NATO, the UN, a developed nation alliance, what have you, okay, that has proxy governments all over the world, ruining countries so you can argue that your culture and your country is superior and you can exploit them and try to get their hot chicks, to become porn stars there and come to America or to become your secretaries here, what have you. Can you then turn around and say, hey, why are they coming here and trying to pursue happiness and trying to live life the way they see fit instead of how we want them to live their lives? No, that is sick and greedy. That is evil. We'll get to that. So their culture includes a conservative elite that insists on that. And by conservative, I mean conservative. Almost all Democrats are conservative with some liberal leanings as their stated argument, but they follow the conservative model of global control and making demands on people. And they just spit propaganda. They're corrupt politicians. Point number three. Only a childish dog and an inferior form of life would play stupid about this, and everyone knows that. This is important to note that. Okay, just like with the Nazis, right? They had concentration camps and arbitrary killings and so on and so forth. Okay, extrajudicial killings. Now why? Because it was the theme of their culture. It's not something that happened to be there and their culture is perfect or something. Their culture had evil in it at every turn. And the types of people who plan to do the things that they're doing and are doing them are evil. And many people in both parties are playing stupid. Only a childish dog and an inferior form of life would play stupid about this, and everyone knows that. However, many people are dumb enough and low-bred enough to get people to play stupid about this and smirk at people when they are trying to fix the situation, okay, or to go along with that process. So you get these sarcastic worms everywhere who are acting like devils. They're acting like Lilith. They're acting like Azazel. They're acting like the devil himself, what have you. And they smirk at people and they harass them and they cancel cultures. Both parties cancel cultures. And they abuse people. And they're greedy, greedy, greedy. Which reflects the cultivative cycle of their culture. Their reproductive cycles, which are key in cultures. What is Western culture without reproductive cycles? It ends in no time flat kind of thing. Their reproductive cycles are evil, and their cultures are evil, and they need to change. This is the difference between being a liberal and a conservative. It's not whether or not you're a Democrat or Republican. It's whether you believe in what's right, individual rights, keyword rights, what's right, what's universally right. Whether or not you believe in moral absolutes to the point where you believe that somebody has individual rights based on those moral absolutes, which must be true. For example, you don't just kill someone for no reason. You don't take over the world and ruin every country and then enslave people and say, hey, you're not being a good enough slave, so we're going to turn it up on you. That's wrong universally. And if you come to our country out of desperation, we're going to expect even more from you. That's universally wrong. Point number 4. Clearly there's a plan in place to either enslave the vast majority of the world or to force people to meet halfway with the monsters whose stated argument is that they want to enslave the vast majority of the world. Now, when it comes to meeting halfway, I've made my point very well. There's no viable counterargument. If somebody wanted to rape your kids every day of the week, do you meet halfway with them and let them rape your kids half the time, half the week? No. That's sick. Neither do you meet halfway with people who want to completely enslave the world. To meet halfway with conservatives, whether they're Republicans or something else, is extremely sick. It is sick, sick, sick. Tell them you insist on what's right, not what's half right. My goodness. Now keep in mind, there may be trillions of people who are enslaved before the human race goes extinct. The plan is more evil than it is right now. It's the long-term plan as well. Okay? They could enslave 100 trillion people before the human race goes extinct, for all you know. These are sick people who want their kids to be slave masters. Very sick. Modern-day slave masters. Just because you're not on a sugarcane plantation, just because they're not picking cotton doesn't mean you're not a slave. There's various forms of slavery. That's why people are called debt slaves. That's why it's called slave wages. Think. Their plan is pure evil and involves rape by deception on a scale that is hard to fathom and over countless years. Rape by deception. For example, when you're dumb enough to be conservative, you've been deceived. When you're dumb enough to be a typical Democrat or Republican, you've been deceived. And if you date that way, you're being raped in some shape or form. You were deceived in being dumb enough to do something that would cause you to say, hey, what was I thinking? If you're ever free enough to catch your mistake in the future. You see what I'm saying? Their plan, just like their culture by default, because their culture includes their plan. It is a psychotic elite plan that trickles down to every culture that they allow, every culture that they're not counseling. So therefore their plan and their culture are pure evil, sick, immature, fanatic, deranged, selfish, greedy, racist, hellish, ignorant, barbaric, it's for the undisciplined, it's dishonest, it's petty, it's nightmarish, it's exploitative and senseless. So let's go through this slowly so you can appreciate it. Their plan, like the culture that allows for their plan, that is that off that it allows for them to have their plan and maintain being in their culture, is evil, sick, immature, fanatic, deranged, selfish, greedy, racist, hellish, ignorant, barbaric. It's for the undisciplined. It's dishonest. It's petty. It's nightmarish. It's exploitative. It's senseless. It's misleading, etc. That's why when people talk about meeting halfway, they say Hegel, right? The Hegelian principle, Hegelian dialectic. The word Hegel, Hegel, is a play on words for HEL/EG. It's called an anagram. Sometimes anagrams don't have, the second G in egg, for example. Hegel is a play on words for hell, egg. Going back to their reproductive cycle, their culture, their plan, their ways, their paths, what have you. Point number 6, if their culture is so great, why hasn't their college education system corrected their desire to be stupid and greedy and evil, etc., etc.? Why haven't all these universities and all these graduates in America, most people in America, most adults, have a college degree? So why hasn't their culture, which is expressed through their education system, after all those years of educating them, why hasn't it corrected this? Point number 7. If someone has $10 million and they gave up $1 million over 30 years, they would still be rich. Why be greedy to the point where you look like the dumbest idiot while creating poverty and suffering? 9 million people starve to death and die of hunger-related issues every year in the world. 3 million of them children because of the Western culture, really, the governing class culture, because of the cultures of developed nations and how they relate to foreign policy, foreign agendas, foreign exploitation, what have you. So you're talking about the cultures that kill the most people on this planet, and out of greed. The main people given the marching orders to proxy governments all over the world. It's not a coincidence that Venezuela, for example, is a socialist, right? Socialism comes from America. That Cuba was communist. To some degree, it still is. There's degrees of communism. And communism comes from Germany. It is a global Western system. And just like in Rome, you had some people that leaned left and some people that leaned right. But all of them were in the boundaries of the Roman agenda. It is a conservative government because they're conserving the governing class agenda. So Western culture can be seen as conservative culture, where some people lean left, but they still maintain the core components of conservatism, maintaining the social order, maintaining the governing class, being controlled opposition that pretends to take on the rich, like Donald Trump saying he's going to drain the swamp, or liberals, Democrats saying that they want to redistribute the money, but they never move in a way that is optimum. They never try with all their heart to redistribute the wealth in a way that's fair. And they cheat the righteous. If you're going to cheat the righteous to conserve the social status of the wicked, okay, then you're a wicked conservative. What do you think you were? You think you're the good guy? Don't tell me you're that crazy. Point number 8. They do things in a way that makes it so I have to address their stated argument and somewhat secret motive as well. So not only have to address their stated argument, they try to play me out as a conspiracy theorist when I bring up the obvious that their proxy governments still exist. The Cold War had everything to do with proxy wars, and those wars didn't end. Even to this day, here we see the West and, the Ukraine at odds with Russia to this day. Proxy governments are still significant to this day, as well as allies like South Korea, Taiwan, what have you. 9. Part of what is going on is while they are making it clear that Western culture isn't superior, they are playing a contrast game where they pretend some often suit-wearing rich types are magically superior with better genes, etc. Because it's eugenics, right? They want to improve the genes of the governing class while they're impairing other people's genes. And that's other people's genes. That's what Francis Galton said was about. It's about using the agencies and the institutions under social control to improve and impair racial qualities. Improve or impair racial qualities. Open and shut. And that's what we see all over the world. That's why people are in such poor health these days, because a bunch of rich people are trying to pretend that they're superior. And that's part of the culture that they're insisting on maintaining. They are King George on steroids. They're Adolf Hitler on steroids. They're crazy. Point number 10. In a free country, one has the right to declare the supremacy of their own culture and to vie with that culture. However, when one realizes that it is unfair and racist, to attack other cultures or what have you, they must stop. For example, the Klan has the right to argue that they like their culture better than everyone else. They don't have the right to cancel cultures. They don't have the right to terrorize people. They don't have the right to blacklist people and to scramble to prevent people from pursuing happiness and having a fair chance to have a living wage, what have you. And that's what the conservative elite is doing right now, and everyone knows it. They are scrambling to cancel cultures, even having Democrats help them do it, to prevent people from having their right to pursue happiness because they want to sexually enslave people and control money, because they don't understand their own Bible, where it says that fine linen, which is required to get into heaven. The parable of the wedding banquet stands for the righteous acts of the saints, Revelation 19. Not for, your social status or your position in a secular system, what have you. Not for how much money you have or how much, you bully other people, but for the righteous acts in reality. The content of the character in reality. Stay tuned for part 2. Okay, I'm going to post a part 2 of this video.